Hey, folks. Welcome to Cannabis Pros and Marketing Masters. I'm your host, Nigel Despinasse. We're on with the Beard Bros Network right now. And we've got Stella Morrison as our guest today. She is founder of CannaContent Co., the Stella Astro Effect. She's an award-winning content marketer. She has a rich history in journalism and media. And she is here to kick some game for everybody today. So,
Hell
hi,
yeah.
Stella. Feel free to give
to be
everyone an
here.
intro.
Great to be here. Thanks so much for taking the time with me today. I'm excited to watch Beard Bros content. You see all the stuff Beard Bros does. And it's like, oh God, I'm going to be on it. That's amazing. So you covered a lot of it in the intro, but a little bit about why I'm here and why the hell you're even talking to me in the first place. So our agency, CannaContent, we opened our doors in 2017, knowing that cannabis in its legal sense was going to keep growing in the East Coast where I'm from. I'm from New Jersey. My co-founders are from New Jersey and New York as well. We are very, very, very rooted in the tri-state area. We knew that cannabis was coming here. New York and New Jersey at the time, this was 2017, had smaller medical programs. Didn't even really occur to me that cannabis could be an industry, but we'll get into the founding story in a second. Right. But we opened our doors when Governor Phil Murphy said we're going to have legal cannabis in 100 days in New Jersey. 4 years later, we got what we wanted, and as one does in cannabis. And we have been working and growing with the industry ever since. It was important to us to stay with the East Coast. There's a lot of folks who do what we do in places like Colorado, California. I have spent time in California, but this is we felt it was very important to grow with emerging markets, the East Coast, and in places where education was going to be a huge part of whatever was going to be needed to help market product, dispensaries, companies, things like that. So my background, let me pause if you want to ask questions.
Yeah, for sure. So 2017, I feel like, especially for when it comes to East Coast cannabis, is pretty early in terms of like making that decision. There's some element of you can't really like time a market, so to say, right? I'm interested in understanding like what brought you to that, right? What, we kind of talked about it and I want to dig more into it, but I know you came from journalism, radio, and then moved into like content copy and that kind of realm of things. What, I guess, made you go, from that to choosing to do copy and content and then being like, all right, well, let's like niche down into cannabis? Because like I said, especially coming from, West Coast where everything's popping, it's legalizing, it's growing. You have like the subset of the East Coast where, markets aren't developed or are barely legalizing. What brought you to that?
Let's go back to the very beginning. A very good place to start. Don't make me sing on your podcast. But so I started out in journalism. I had my first newsroom job when I was 16, had my first bylines when I was 18 as a staff writer, had my first round of layoffs when I was 20. So I knew the pain of print journalism very, very early on. Wow. And definitely wanted to do radio at first. There were no jobs when I graduated. Literally, when I tell you I went to Media Bistro and there were 7 listings in the country, I'm like, let's go back to print. So I went into community journalism and laid my roots there. I loved it. But it was really unsustainable. Not only was the pay not livable wages, and the writing was on the wall about where that was going. I was in print in that prime spot in media where nobody really figured out how to make money off of digital yet, but print was dying, right? And there was this space of, we didn't have the tools and the ability to pursue more things online. This is like 2013, 2014. Okay. We didn't have the space or support to really do that, or the technical backing to do that. Even legal was worried about us tweeting, which was like cutting off a journalist's oxygen if you weren't on Twitter in 2013. Yeah. So we weren't allowed to tweet. I'm like, you let me interview senators, and I can't tweet, but that's a different conversation. But the writing was on the wall about I just couldn't make it work. $11 an hour, you can't eat on that. And then you wonder why local journalism journalism is dead. I'm like, well, you paid us $22,000 a year, but again, another conversation. And a good friend of mine from childhood was working on the manufacturing side of the brand licensing industry. So that's basically a lot of electronics, not all of them, but a lot of things that aren't Sony or the big brands. If you see a speaker in a store or a pair of headphones in a store, like a Big Lots RIP, something like that, or Target, whatever it is, there's a company making that because they're licensing the brand name and they're doing the manufacturing. So I did that for consumer electronics, for lighting products, for kitchenware for a long time. It was a very different field, but you know what? I needed to live, and it opened up a whole world of branding for me. That was really, really interesting to see. And I love this idea of like getting creative and figuring out where the licensing industry fits in with something like this. How does a product like make sense with the brand, right? You can't just, I mean, people do all the time, but you can't just slap a logo on something and hope it'll sell. I mean, there's plenty of that out there, but of course you got to go a little bit deeper than that. So I did that for a couple of years, and you know, as much as I loved the job, I wanted to go back to writing, and that was what I wanted to do. That's what my niche was. I had a terrible experience in working for other people, and I'm just like, I'm done. I want to do something on my own. And at the time I had seen, this was probably like 2016, 2015, started to see the split between freelancers and agencies. There really was no in between. Freelancers can't scale, and agencies are usually too big for most folks to be able to afford. At least like a lot of SMBs, like they're not looking for the agencies that are servicing Coca-Cola or whatever. They're looking for something smaller. So I came in and opened up an agency to meet that need, just in content at first. That was in 2015.
And this was Stella Astro Effect.
Yeah, it had a different name back then, but yeah, my 10th year of business there. We opened up, started working primarily with web developers who had clients that never gave them content to put on the websites. And here you do it. And I'm like, okay, I'll figure this out. And that was the first, and that's how it started. Then I got busier, and then I quit my job. And then it took a little bit for people to really figure out what the role of content was in these strategies. This was about a decade ago. It took people a while to figure out, but they eventually did. And, you know, I've been doing a lot of work over there. I've been doing a lot of work over there, a lot of different niches. I do a lot of commercial real estate, B2B, SaaS work. Really, the journalism background that my staff has there kind of helps us go into any niche, but that's not exactly a selling point anymore. So not a selling point anymore. It was a selling point, not anymore. But but the idea is we can learn anything and be able to apply it. So we do a lot of like harder topics, a lot of B2B, talked to a lot of engineers who don't get marketing, and it's a lot of that work as well. So about a year into this, though, this was 2017, to go back to the main point of this. So Adam Ujalko, my co-founder, he and I met in the newsroom. He took over my beat when I left. And we kept in touch over the years, just for, hey, you remember this? Do you have any feedback or tips? And we became friends. We were just chatting. And he was freelancing for me at Stella Astro. He was freelancing for me. And at the time, he had moved over to another company where he was assigned the cannabis beat, and he was reporting on the cannabis industry. So folks that we're colleagues with now, we're pitching to Adam 10 years ago, which is so funny to me.
That is crazy.
And it's just wild that these are contemporaries and friends of ours now that were just sending us press releases, right? So but Adam was getting calls and emails out of the blue from random people in cannabis being like, I need help writing. Can you help me? So Adam called me. And he's like, I never freelanced before aside from you. You know, how do you charge? What do you do? And by the end of the conversation, I'm like, Adam, this is a business. This isn't a one-off thing. The fact that people are calling you and they're asking you about this, I think this is way beyond just a one-off thing.
It's a need.
He brought in Bree Brewer, our chief creative officer, and the three of us opened CannaContent that summer, had our first client about 6 weeks later, 2 months later. And we've been running exhaustively ever since. So it was really an interesting set of circumstances, because one of the things that I never realized was that cannabis was a business, right? Like I had always said no one should be in jail for weed. I'd always believed that. Reading in college, The New Jim Crow by Michelle Alexander changed my entire worldview on like just how deep the problem was.
For sure.
And it's just something I felt strongly about, but like not everybody feels strongly about something then goes to work in that industry, right? That's just that's not life. And then it was really cool to see that, once you kind of decided that this was the right move to open it up as a business, and then knew that we all felt very passionately about the injustice side of things, to realize that this could coexist as a business was a really, really, really cool moment. And then we just kind of, we had clients, but we waited. We knew that legalization was coming. We knew that we would need to be a part of the community, right? Because this is something that I knew was going to take deep and narrow understanding. And that's something that marketers who just kind of show up out of nowhere and they're like, we do weed now. And I'm just like, you didn't put in the time like we did. Like you weren't talking to the advocates. You weren't supporting, where were you when we needed to go to the state house, right? When did this happen? And what can we do to sort of, not to say that we are, we're very much not leaders and advocates in that way, but we knew that it would take time.
We're community involved, right? That's what's important.
That's the way it was, is that we understood from the beginning that this was community, and being a part of the community was going to be very, very important. And it's something that I feel really strongly about and why I really push for working in states that we have a personal connection to, right? Like I'm in Ohio. Ohio is a mess right now, but it's my mess because I live here, right? Yeah. We all have connections to New Jersey, New York, Pennsylvania, like all these states that's really like the three main states we do a ton of work in. And we knew that this was, being a part of the community is just so important, and understanding the issues on the ground, and that from town to town things are different, from region to region things are different. When we have a deep understanding of the neighborhood, the clientele, things turn out better. And that doesn't mean that we can't pick up and do this for anybody anywhere. We definitely do. But there's intimacy is not the right word, but there's a closeness there that further drives the passion, right? Like knowing that there's when a dispensary opened a block from my mom's house, you sure bet that owner got a call from me. And I said, hey, guess who?
You're selling weed around my mom. We're going to work together.
Exactly. Right. And she, it's just like, she's always telling me, like, when she walks around town, she's like, I saw this storefront. Like, it's just like, there's something about that connection there that really drives me. And I find very, very, very interesting. So, we've done work in essentially every legal state, right? And we've done good work in those states. I just have a lot of deep care for ones that we have some sort of connection to in some way, whether we're from there, have family there, have visited a lot, vacation there a lot, live there currently. That's something that we definitely, it's the community aspect that we think makes a difference, right? It's understanding, it's building trust, which I think is a missing factor with marketers in general. Is Agreed. I'm not going to take your money and run. We're building a relationship. We're figuring out what we're going to do together. And that takes being a part of community. And that's not like a nebulous thing. That's how can we show up and, be of support in some way, in some fashion.
Absolutely. And the thing for me, I think that, I think this is, we're on our 10th episode of this, and like the single unifying truth across every single marketer that I've talked to is that element of like community, genuineness, and trust. Because if you don't have that with the people that you work with, that's what ultimately leaves a bad taste in people's mouths with agencies or working with different freelancers or marketing in general, right? You'll find like a lot of disdain across companies for marketing when like is a really necessary component of people's business. You know what I mean? Like if you're not having somebody cry the message of what you're selling, then like, who's going to know? And the biggest thing that I've mainly worked in sales across my time in cannabis, and you come across so many people, especially in sales, where they are just trying to ultimately make it only a numbers game, where it's like, I'm going to hit as many people as possible and shill whatever I'm doing. And like the real way that cannabis works and most of my professional career has been in cannabis. So like maybe this is the case in consumer electronics or things like that. But you have to have a relationship with people and have someone like actually understand and like you before they buy something from you.
Yeah.
And I think that community involvement aspect is such a massive piece of that, where like if people are going to New Jersey trade shows or meetups and they see your face and you talk to them and you're genuinely interested in what they've got going on, of course I'm going to give the time of day to you to be like, well, what are you working with? How can we work together? Like, how can we build bridges? You know, it's like I don't know. I think the folly of individuals who enter cannabis is thinking that you can just come in and like scale to an infinite degree just by hitting numbers. And that's just not the reality. It's not.
It drives me nuts, Nigel, to see that. It drives me nuts. You know, we've kind of, I know I have a reputation for being the Jersey person, and I'm very fine with that. You know, and folks call us because of that affiliation, but it makes a difference, right? When they're talking about the neighborhoods, I know where they are. I understand the landscape. I know that, you know, great, that's a goal to rank for New Jersey dispensary, but if you're doing that in South Jersey, are the people who drive 2 hours away, are they really going to drive 2 hours to come shop with you, right? It's be realistic. It's understand your neighborhood, understand your demographic, and that's where you're really going to see the magic happen. Exactly. And so you nailed it. You nailed it. There are people, when I'll recall a story. We were helping out with a partner of ours on some website content for one of their clients, and I'm like, this dispensary was like right where I live. I knew exactly where it was. I knew the merits. I knew the pain that it was to get into their plaza. I knew exactly what was going on. And I look at the roundup, I look at their intake questionnaire, and it said, you know, who's your audience? And it literally said everyone. And I'm like, all right, you're going to wonder in 6 months why things aren't working for you, because that's not possible. And then I talked to the clients, you know, we work with like a small, a woman on micro license who, you know, she has such a target of who she wants to be speaking with. And that is working for her because she's one of the best performing in her area, because she knows exactly who she's talking to. She doesn't have to be for everybody. My opinion, the high THC shoppers are going to come up no matter what, right? If they want a 30% strain, they're going to show up to whatever's closest to them. And that's the power of dispensary near me. However, if somebody is a parent and they're, you know, they're not sure what to do, or they're not sure if they can bring, New Jersey is one of the rare places you can bring your kid with you. And like,
did not know that.
I think it's a loophole, but I think it's an accidental loophole that wasn't closed, but you can, like a liquor store, you can walk in as long, you know, they can't touch anything. There's no product out.
Yeah, of course.
But like, you know, that's unclear because that's not allowed in other states, you know, things like that. So it's like, well, I don't know about that. Or maybe they're an older adult who feels a little uncomfortable or doesn't really know how to navigate the menu. Maybe they don't know how to use the iPad, right? Or the kiosk, and they want to be talked through things. These are the kind of details of customer experience that are going to make a difference. And that's going to translate into your digital marketing as well. You know, if you build it, they will come. We are so gone from the days of, if you build it, they will come. That's especially not in a place like New Jersey that's hitting maturity.
Weed does not sell itself.
It does not sell itself. And the people who say that weed sells itself are the people who don't do well. And I will tell you this, from experience, that the folks who understand their target market are the ones who are excelling. The ones who understand they're not for everybody are the ones who are excelling. The ones who try too hard to be everything for everybody are the ones who don't do well. And that speaks to the power of branding. And that speaks to the power of, you know, who you are, going back to community, right? Are you part of this community? How are you interacting with the community? What is your role here? And that really, that's going to tie back. That's going to be a longer search engine optimization play as SEO really gets rocky with AI overviews, and which is like Google's like AI responses at the top of results. Things are going to get rocky. They're continuing to get rocky. We don't really know long-term what the implications are. Exactly. We don't know long-term what the implications are. But we have to think about the potential of what a fallout could be anyway. And one of the things that you can fall back on is the strength of your brand, right? Where, you know, not only do search engines honor authority in the space, they honor authority in the cannabis space, whether you are a giant MSO or one location in one little town up in some hamlet in New York. You are, your authority plays a role in how you rank on search engines, and it's also going to play a role in the brand, right? Because even if somebody has never been to your store or really heard of you, if your logo looks familiar or your name sounds familiar, you're more likely to get that click from them. And that's where you start bringing them into the experience, and you start showing them, this is what we're about, and this is what we bring to the table, and this is how you can be a part of this like larger family. Don't love using the family term, but let's roll with it. Let's roll with it here.
Right. Okay. That is the thing that I always think about when it comes to that is, right, you have innovation, you have brand, you have a bunch of these different things that pad up a moat in terms of what gives you, differentiation from your competition.
Yep.
And it's so funny that in the marketing realm, it is one of those things where people will almost always discredit how much work a strong brand does while they're wearing Nike shoes, a Lululemon top. Like, it blows my mind every time, because it's one of those things where you go, if you embed yourself in a community and like are active and are doing different things and are speaking to the people who are coming to your store, you are their weed store, and we have ample data across the nation that shows if you do a sell to everyone type of situation, you commodify yourself instantly. That instantly becomes a price war between you and whoever's near you. And that just leads to ruin, We're too overregulated and overtaxed. Yeah, exactly. And they have great weed. They have great weed, but it's not, you only have a certain amount of stores or brands who are like very outward and open and known in terms of their brand. And a lot of it's from scale, and like the work gets done when you're building the identity and doing that inch wide, mile deep form of brand marketing, where you're saying, I know who I'm talking to. That's where I'm getting into it.
100%. And the example I was telling you about the folks who don't have a target market like that and don't do well, those are all in Michigan, actually, which actually plays to, you can't just walk into a place, and you can't, if you build it, they will come. And that's when you turn that price to the bottom. And shocker, that's when you're trying to do, penny pre-rolls, dollar pre-rolls, whatever, it's not going to get you anywhere. Is that you're just going to struggle, especially if there's other options that have had that familiarity. And I'll never forget this dispensary. The logo didn't match the signage on the front of their store, and they wouldn't do anything about why that was a problem. And I'm like, shrug, I guess. I don't know what to say. Like, it's just,
what am I supposed to do with this?
Exactly. And this is why, when we're talking to folks, I ask these questions of, do you have a brand book? Let's start with that. Right? You don't have to have the full 50-page thing if you didn't do that, but at minimum, you didn't just go to Fiverr for a logo, or your daughter knows Photoshop, right? Like, tell me you went to somebody who gave you at least what the colors are, what the font is, and give us a place to start, because otherwise, if we can't do this like straight line, we start going like this, right? And this is where we're confusing customers. The example I love to use is the T-Mobile magenta, a color fuchsia, magenta, the pink. The T-Mobile pink is so associated with T-Mobile that they tried to trademark it. It didn't work, but they tried to trademark it. And when you close your eyes, you know exactly what I'm talking about when I say the T-Mobile pink. You don't have
100%.
100%. You know what that is. The Dunkin' Donuts orange. You know exactly what I'm talking about. East Coast people forever. You know exactly what I'm talking about. And your dispensary or your brand might not be Dunkin' or T-Mobile, and you're maybe not trying to be the Dunkin' or T-Mobile of weed. Let's put that.
That's not the important part, though.
Oh my God! Put that analogy to pasture, please. But like, this is you are
you're building a connection.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. It's all about, people are not thinking about, where am I going to buy weed today every moment of every day.
The cookie's blue.
No one's thinking about that anywhere. Like, I love you, but you're not that special. Do you know what I mean? Nobody is thinking at every moment of every day where they're going to go, what brand they're going to do. They're not obsessing over that, but it's subconscious, right? It adds up. It's, I have heard of that solution, right? In marketing, there's this, it's a little tired, but there's this adage, basically, the data says that on average, you need 8 touch points. to get to somebody to even remember that you exist, right?
Yeah.
And touch points exist everywhere, right? That's online, that's in person, that's every time you go into the store, right? It's where are people reading about you, where are they seeing you? It's about the I hate to it's about the vibe you're creating, right?
Yeah.
It's the vibe you're creating. It's how are people associating with you even before they step into that store, right? If they know that you're just for everybody, that's not believable. That's not a believable line. That's the other thing. Everybody with a wallet is not believable. As much as you want to say we welcome everybody, we're inclusive, and that's a nice message, that's very hard to believe unless you're at walking the walk, talking the talk, or doing something very specific to support that, right?
Yes,
so this is why we want to see dispensaries that are really leaning into, or dispensaries, brands, whomever, really leaning into who they know what they're talking to. It makes a massive difference in the end product. And it also influences what we're going to do in search, right? Like from a content marketing perspective, yes, we have successfully built all-encompassing libraries before and continue to do it for MSOs and other dispensaries. But we also need to kind of narrow down the importance of some of this, right? Like there is no way that any random dispensary is ranking for what is THC anymore. And also, why does it matter? Why do people need to learn what THC is from you? They need to learn other things about the neighborhood from you. They need to learn about maybe something specific that relates to your target demographic, right? Like, and then you bring it together that way, and then you can really hone in on what's going to make a difference, because what's going to keep people coming back, what's going to keep people on your website is if the content resonates with them. If they, yes, you might need to have a what is THC piece in some that's into the weeds, but we don't need to make that a target. There's no point. I like to say, why would you want to rank for pizza when Domino's is always going to clobber you, right?
Yeah, exactly.
There's no point. There's no point in going up against that kind of beast. But you know what? People looking for pizza in their 3-mile radius of their house are probably already know Domino's exists and is probably not looking for it. They're looking for something different. They're looking for something relevant. And that's where it's your time to shine, because those are people who are serious. They're ready to move. They're not just Googling something for the sake of Googling. They're
high intent.
Exactly. I love a good high intent. I love a good long tail keyword. I'm speaking foreign language to some people, but I love a good long tail keyword because it shows that someone is thinking deeply.
It's so specific.
Exactly. They're thinking specifically about what they want, right? A gluten-free edible is a lot more specific than edible, right? And those, I have a gluten allergy. I always am looking for gluten-free edibles. And whenever I'm looking for that, I'm looking for ones made without animal products. And so I'm looking for vegan edibles, right? I'm looking for these things. And dispensaries are really starting to catch on where products fit in these categories and are starting to cater to that. And I'm loving seeing that moment.
What's the age-old point of segmentation, right? Like people, I think, only tend to dimensionalize it down to emails, whereas segmentation exists in all sorts of places. Products themselves are segmentation, like the fact that you have distillate gummies versus hash rosin gummies versus, chocolates versus, you know what I mean? There's a whole world of a consumer that wants this. So let's talk to them about it. Gluten-free, vegan. There are brands that have come onto the market that says, this is who we service. If you want to give us a try, go for it. Like you have the Grunes of the world. You have the ultra small batch craft stuff that are looking to essentially service people who have a certain dietary restrictions, which that's huge. That's awesome. That's a part of normalization. That's what's bringing us into a more mainstream thing.
Back to gone are the days where you build it and they will come.
Exactly.
We have a market. We have to get out of this mindset of if you build it, they will come. And I can't believe I have to keep saying this, that we are in a position now where consumers have a lot of choice, right? They don't have to go to a certain place because they have to, or because there's only 2 options on the menu. They're not going to stand for that anymore. They are looking for a specific. And yes, there's economies of scale that are larger problems here that I'm not a manufacturer, so I'm not the right person to speak to this. But this is, it's not always practical, but the ones that are dialing down are really winning. And Nigel, I really like the way that you put it as segmentation outside of thinking about email, because I have not even put it in those terms myself yet, but you're 100% right. That's exactly what it is. I'm calling it target audience this whole time. That's exactly
what it is though. Target audience is segmenting, you know?
Exactly. And an email blast that doesn't apply to everybody is not going to convert in the same way. You get those high open rates when you are drilling things down. It's going to be the same thing. It could be the same thing with products. That's why I like long tail. That's why I like these very long searches, right? If I'm looking for gluten-free edible near me, right? That's a very different search than just edibles, right? It's a very different intent. You know, it could be the data probably only comes back that I'm sure only 20, 30, 40 people. I'm sure it's a very small keyword that not a ton of people are searching it.
But they want to buy.
But those are people are going to buy it because they're looking for something very specific. Exactly. Anything more general, it's vanity at that point. And I've always believed that it's vanity. There is a point where you hit a certain area of growth where you can start going for that. And we do have clients at that point, but that's going to depend on your overall intent, your strategy, your desired outcome. It's really going to depend on, is it even worth going down that road? And it's okay to not be the Domino's of weed. It's really okay. It's okay. You don't need to be everything for everybody. You don't need to be ubiquitous. And that doesn't mean you're not going to do well. These dispensaries are doing fine.
Some are, especially like you said, the ones who are really like nailing down their community and their audience, you would be surprised at the people who are crushing it out there because they've decided.
Yeah, absolutely. You would think that larger outfits or people with the loudest brands are really doing it. Well, it's the folks who understand their audience and they know their brand, they know who they're talking to, they know what they're about, and they're running directly to that target audience. That's the way, man.
So, okay. So I want to like kind of bring it back to what you were talking about before, because I think this is a very salient point, especially in the realm of SEO now, where you have generative search, right? So you have a whole upending of a traditional understanding of how search works. And as someone who's running an agency, what are you seeing in terms of the difference of AI coming in and a lot of content being created from that? And, does it matter more about specific context like you were talking about, right? If you're ranking for top for vegan, gluten-free gummy near me in, Orange, New Jersey, is that going to be what pops up in a generative search bubble if you're the only person that has the content having to do with that? Like I'm curious on a agency owner's perspective.
Yeah. So I'm going to use one of my favorite phrases here, which is multiple things can be true at once.
Yeah.
This is my favorite phrase because I think if we don't want to think in black and white mentalities because we're not going to get far. So the first thing that AI overviews, even after the disaster rollout last May, it's been 11 months.
Yeah.
They were always going to be coming, right?
Yes.
They were always going to be coming. Google rushed it very obviously. But the thing about large language models, LLMs, which is the kind of things that the platforms that things like ChatGPT run on, they get smarter as they learn more. Yes. It's just how are they learning, right? And there is definitely concern about accuracy. There's concerns about, I see results come back incorrect all the time. Cannabis, non-cannabis, they're not correct. Will they get better? We don't know. So I have a couple spicy takes on this.
I'm excited.
Yeah. My first spicy take is, and this is not just true to cannabis, this is all industries. We have been the system is garbage in, garbage out. If we are so used to pumping out piles of mediocre content, which is what a lot of content marketing and SEO has become,
absolutely,
don't be surprised when the results are mediocre because we have been feeding it. We've been feeding the baby junk food, and now the baby doesn't want to eat vegetables anymore. Like, are you surprised? That's exactly what's happening. So I'm pretty dug in heels on that theory because you can see it in the way, because I've been doing this in content for SEO for a decade plus.
Right.
I know what the bad writing looks like. And the average person notices a lot more than you would think, but you can tell when something is not well researched or poorly done, or it's the same refrains over and over again. It's not a sign of AI because people, I don't know if you've seen there's been this debate that's been dragged on for months on LinkedIn about, is the M dash a sign of AI writing? No, it's just overused, and that's LLMs are picking up on that. Like, it's just a very overused tactic. I lay down my sword in defense of the M dash, but like, it's a different conversation.
Right.
But this is, it's, if you're putting in garbage into the system, don't be surprised when you're not happy with the results. So I think there are, so this is where there's multiple, let's go into the multiple truths part of this.
Yeah, please.
Google has, and I say specifically Google because they are still the largest search engine, even though they have been slipping, they're still 89-90% of market share.
For sure.
Google has come out and said that it does not matter if the content was generated by AI or not in terms of ranking. Google has also said that it can detect if you are generating AI content and might not consider it. So that's something that's a paradox that to me is just speaking to quality, right?
Absolutely.
It's speaking to quality. If you are using LLMs to create content at scale to publish inhuman amounts of content, right?
Yeah.
We're talking 50, 100 pieces a month, you're going to get flagged, right? If you are using AI to help create the direction of the 6 pieces of content a month you're publishing, and you're publishing that steadily on a regular basis, that's going to be a different story, right?
Absolutely.
Really what the lesson here is, nothing should be done without human oversight, especially in cannabis, right? No matter the detail in this industry, you have one fact and 3 people have different takes on that fact, whether because they're coming from decades of grower knowledge and they're bringing that firsthand experience versus someone who's pulling from studies versus someone who's speaking anecdotally to what their experience is, right? This is why stoner lore has stuck around for so long, right? Absolutely. This is why indica sativa hybrid has stuck around for so long, even though we know that the indica sativa hybrid designation really doesn't mean anything to the experience compared to cannabinoid ratios, terpene ratios, etc. Right? Like, we know this, but we are reinforcing what people know. And that's just one example of hundreds and thousands of different data points in this industry, right? And if you let things go unchecked, at least have one single, it can be whatever that single source of data is, whether that's your legal resource, whether that's a pharmacist on your staff, have a source of like final say. Because if you're running with content that is contradicting that, there goes your reputation. I think that there are larger legal consequences, not just from a, I think there's not just from a like copyright perspective, but from a ill-advised piece of evidence, ill-advised piece of advice perspective, something that went unchecked for whatever reason. That we have not even, we are starting to see legal consequences there. I think there's ethical problems with use of AI from a capitalist standpoint. I think there's an ethical problem. It doesn't mean it's not a helpful tool. So this is where multiple truths can exist at once, right? Is these can be helpful. We know cannabis companies are strapped, but I don't think the information out there, unless is reliable for things to go unchecked, right? So it doesn't mean it's here to stay, but I am nervous about creating more content using LLMs alone without that kind of verification because of the reasons that I gave.
Yes.
That being said, now we can go to, so that's the 2 truths. There's multiple things can be true at once, right? We have a quality problem. We also have a helpfulness problem. We also have conflicting information coming from, not conflicting, but Google saying at the same time, it's okay to be using this, but you have to be real careful about how you use it. This doesn't mean carte blanche, do whatever you want. It means, how are you applying it smartly, right? And then there's AI overviews themselves, right? So they have been, so to go back to your original, 5 minutes later, go back to your original question, splicing the SpongeBob meme here, like 4 years later.
5 minutes later.
So to go back to your initial question, we are in beta. I'm starting to see hyper-local results come up in AI overviews. I don't think it's available yet. Google is infamously a black box when it comes to the AI overviews data. Yes. And it's been frustrating for SEOs because we're relying on third-party tools that also are not really getting the greatest access. So some of the tools we use, literally one of them just yesterday dropped a feature I haven't even had a chance to test yet. Right. just to monitor what kind of results are coming out. But we are seeing our clients get into AI overviews for broader queries for sure. We're starting to see them get into overviews for products, which was surprising to me. I wasn't expecting that to roll out so quickly.
Wow.
In beta, I'm starting to see hyperlocal results. So meaning like I'm logged in, I'm experimenting with like what's to come. Like I'm starting to see things like what is the best dispensary in New York City, or whatever X service near me, or X provider that I could use, whatever that looks like. We are starting to see that hyperlocal starting to come out. I think we have some time for that still, but the time to prepare was yesterday. The second best time to prepare is today, because out of all of this, and this is something that I harp on, and I'm sure the internet is sick of me talking about this, but I harp on the fundamentals, because yes, AI overviews has a quality problem. There's a spam problem. It has not been figured out yet. And yes, people are using that. We really don't know if clicks are being driven from AI overviews yet. That's something that there's a couple camps on this. My opinion is the jury's still out, because I'm seeing some evidence. Some people are saying no. I'm seeing some evidence. Like we haven't, overall sites have not dropped like crazy amounts. Like we see, like the dips we're seeing are very normal for just the cycle of sales, especially before 420.
Right.
Like, and the dips, we're talking like 0.5%. Like we're not talking a lot. Is that AI overviews, or is that just the cycle of the calendar because people are waiting to buy for 420, right? So these are questions that we can't, in my opinion, can't point the finger on. And we're not going to be able to point the finger on for months on end.
Until we get data around that.
Until we get more, exactly. Especially in an industry this niche. For larger industries, so I am looking to larger industries to see how that's playing out. And we are starting to see some things that are more hyper specific, but this is where I think quality is going to make a difference, because for someone, let's talk B2B for a little bit, right? Someone who's trying to make a really big decision on buying a piece of equipment for their grow room, or they're trying to get a loan, right? Like really big decisions that mean a lot of money. That's going to take that research is not being replaced by AI overviews yet. I don't think it will for a while. And those people are still going to click through, and they're still going to look deeper. So I hope I answered your question after 15 minutes of ranting, but bottom line is we are starting to see hyperlocal. You were asking about hyperlocal, like really specific searches. And the bottom line is, yes, we are seeing evidence of it. I don't know what the long-term I don't think anybody can claim they know what the long-term
implications of things are.
I don't think anybody can claim that.
I agree with that too, especially because literally things are changing in the AI space like day to day.
Literally daily, things are different. And we're seeing that, we're seeing that head on. So so I harp on the fundamentals of what makes for a good search experience. Is your website fast? Are you providing a good user experience? And is the content answering the questions they have, right? For dispensaries, that can be as simple as when you open. That could be, you'd be shocked what folks don't have resources on their sites till we get them. It could be more as complicated as, hey, we offer these. Here's a comparison of all the vegan gummies on our menu, and here are the benefits. And we aren't even getting into the way product turns over and the kind of mess that makes on sites. That's a different conversation. Yes, so that's all, are you providing content that's actually helpful to the audience, right? And that is a human element that AI is not able to replicate. I'm going to say yet, because we are living in the hellscape that we're living in. But think about, and that's where it gets into a moral quandary for me of, I feel very strongly about AI being used to replace people, which is a very tempting thing.
Of course.
And I give credit to this amazing course that I sat in a couple months ago from a conference called Women in Tech SEO. An SEO named Kavi Kadros gave this incredible talk on basically how this unchecked desire for profit margins to keep growing in a finite space are driving adoption too early. And I went out, my head fell off when I heard this talk. I'm just like, this is incredible. Someone has articulated what I've been thinking and couldn't put my finger on since AI came out, because since like LLMs and things came out, because we can't, this is still, as much as cannabis, and this is again, two things can be true at once.
Yeah.
Cannabis is a CPG. Cannabis is a very personal medicine. It is both. I think we need to regard cannabis as a CPG as marketers, but it's a very personal relationship that somebody has with cannabis. If we start interfering with that with bad advice, or by pushing to, hey, talk to this like level 1 AI bud tender instead of, which I have nothing against AI bud tenders. I'm concerned about their implementation. I think because again, regular bud tenders need to be respected and trained. They need to be respected. Tip your bud tenders, y'all. Like they're very important, and need to be taken seriously. But if we see AI as a tool to cut costs and save money, that's where we're going to suffer. Where it's going to do it's helping to make the people you already have smarter, and that's where it needs to live, right? That's where it needs to live. And I don't want to see people lose their jobs. I've had to do this on the other side of my business, where people decided to go the AI route, and I had to lay off people because of it. And I've seen it. And I'm like, you are way too early, way too early to be doing this. And shocker, some of those clients left and came to me because they saw the results suffering. We're not at that.
So the biggest thing that I think that shines through on the sentiment that you have is that it's about a collaborative effort versus a replacement effort. Right.
Correct.
And what you find with especially like this endless search for profit margin that people have is that they go, oh, awesome. I can, replace my whole marketing team with just one guy who's going to be our prompt engineer or something. Yeah. And the reality of the situation is there's still subject matter expertise that needs to get infused into these things. Mm-hmm. There's different use cases as to why LLMs are going to be useful.
Yep.
We still have machine hallucinations. We still have issues that come into place. We still have different things that, especially like as someone who's from a non-technical background that's been like heavily involved in this stuff in the last couple of months, it's learning. It's like an iterative process in the same way that AI updates. Like if we get new tech on a pretty much daily basis, things like the amount that you learn is almost like exponential as you start to learn these things. And I think a very faulty thing that people are trying to do is that too early adoption, or just having the thought that, oh, wow, I can save XYZ amount of money by replacing this with ChatGPT. And the reality of the situation is like, this is going to be something that does indeed help your workforce, but you have to do it in a smart way. Otherwise, it just starts to spell doom and gloom for both your business and dead internet theory, to be honest.
I was just talking to a friend 2 days ago about how I believe in dead internet theory because of this. I've come around to it. I've always been like, yeah, this is right. I think we know a lot of things are AstroTurf. We know about this. We're all robots talking to each other, and that's a problem. Yes. And I think so. So there's two things here. First, you're 100% correct. I want to talk about I'm just pulling up because I want to take the quote exactly from it. There was a study came out by the Columbia Journalism Review a couple weeks ago that this study went over. It reviewed ChatGPT, Grok. It reviewed a bunch of LLMs and found that they confidently. I'm looking for the phrase exactly.
Yeah. Stated misinformation.
Not just that. No, it was brilliant. Oh, confidently incorrect is the phrase Columbia Journalism Review found. So not only do LLMs decline to answer a question when they don't know the answer, but they hallucinate the answer and they're confidently incorrect with their answers. So, and they found this at different rates across the board, but it was more than 50% for most of them. So, that you're going into an area where instead of an LLM saying, I'm sorry, I don't know the answer to that, or, consult, here's a list of types of people you can consult for the answer, right? That would be a great way to do that. They're not doing that.
Saying the moon is made of cheese. Trust me.
I mean, they wanted us to eat one small rock a day and glue our cheese on our pizza in the beginning, right? So this is, but those are obvious things, right? It's the nuance of cannabis, but especially in new and emerging markets where we're dealing with people who don't know the difference between THC and CBD, hallucinations are dangerous and bad for the brand. And it's scary. So when we're so now, again, two things are true at once. people are starting to read into AI overviews. They're really pushing for the zero-click search world. I don't know how zero-click we're going to get, because there was similar concern when Google launched featured snippets a decade ago, and we all adjusted, right? This is what SEOs do, we adjust.
Yes.
But we are also in a world where if people are being fed, or I don't want to say fed, if people are being served confidently incorrect information, what does that mean for their cannabis experience? That means that what if they grab that RSO and don't realize that the serving size is a dot, and they take a
penny size,
and they're high for 4 days, they're going to the hospital and they're never going to your dispensary again. So there's a marketing concern there. And so it's about smart application. And so I do have a lot of distrust in systems that aren't being checked by humans, and knowledgeable humans at that, because again, you get one opinion. There's six people have different opinions on one thing in cannabis again. And where is that singular source of truth? And this goes into deeper issues about research and how things have been oppressed for so long. And what is a singular source of truth, and what brands and what companies are becoming that singular source of truth? We don't have aside from the fact that NIH is being cut, but a lot of statistically those studies that are funded are generally about addiction rates and more negative.
I was about to say it's about abuse.
Exactly. It's about negative thing. And that's what they're seeking out to fund, or you have to leave the country to literally get that resource. But everything is sporadic. It's disparate. So it's about who becomes or what becomes that source of truth. And when Google is scanning trillions upon trillions of pages, and Reddit to formulate some of these answers,
a lot of Reddit.
My tinfoil hat goes on. When someone exchanges $65 million for them to use your body of data, that influences how things show up, because there's an incentive.
100%.
I don't believe that neutrality at all. So there's a reason that 6-year-old Reddit thread is coming up number 2 and dislodging my results of that are fresh in 2 months and been doing great. But then this massive Reddit thread that has nothing to do with anything shows up. There's a reason for that, but I digress. But so it's about. I'm very much an evangelist for responsible use. Not just the fact that we have to give a shit about humans. We have to care about people. We can't throw people out because we can replace them with a chatbot. We can't do that. And I'm nervous. Garbage in, garbage out. All of these things that I've said over the last 30 minutes are all come to a head here. If you're using it responsibly, if you're human checked, if you're using it to shorten the time for data, like it's helping. Like there's the AI aspect. AI is helping in things that are freeing up my staff to do other things, right? Yes. Like no one has to transcribe something anymore because it's so cheap to send it to Rev and do it for $7, right? It's so much we can just get it done. And you know what? The quotes aren't 100% accurate, but you know what? It's going to take a lot less time to go through and just go back and play back and tweak things as we need to, than to go back and do it by hand. I remember transcribing by hand. I am an incredibly fast typer because I'm so used to, from journalism, transcribing as the interview went, because it saved me so much time, So how is it helping unleash the potential to think about larger problems? And I know this is what people say, and I'm not the only person who says this. I'm another voice of the chorus, but I'm happy to throw my hat in the ring and be another person to support this angle.
Absolutely. And I love it, because I agree with you. I think whenever you have, a model that is confidently saying incorrect things, you also have the inherent bias of humans to defer to an authority, or what they think of as an authority. And, the confidence aspect of it not saying, hey, I have 40% degree of confidence in this answer. If you just get an answer from it, I have friends who use it instead of Google right now. And I try to tell them, I'm like, you have to put a bunch of other parameters in. Even telling it to take a deep breath before it answers you helps reduce hallucinations by like 12%. It's crazy.
That's so interesting.
Isn't it? It's like,
I never heard that. That's so interesting.
Oh, it's wild. I mean, the amount of things that they found to help reduce those is crazy. But the point is that, these aren't best practices that are known across people who use it. Like, for the most part, people are using this in like hobbyistic ways, or they're using it from a professional setting. And like you said, garbage in, garbage out. If I type in, tell me about Stella Morrison, it'll give me something. But if I go ahead and I give like a background as to who you are and say like, can you give me like an in-depth understanding of, her time selling consumer or helping to sell consumer electronics, I'm going to get a way different answer. It gives them more of a context window for it's working.
100%. And oh God, I will never use these systems. I can't do that for myself. I can't do that. It's too much. But we're at this, we're at a time, this is me starting to wax political a little bit too much, but we're at a time of extremely low information. Media literacy is at an all-time low. And we're asking people to try or to buy something from us that might change their state of consciousness. People have to figure out, every single person who consumes cannabis has a story about the time they took too much. Every single person. And, a lot of us did this before there was an unlicensed market, before there was a licensed market. A lot of us do this even when there's a licensed market, because you don't realize that one piece is 10 milligrams, but really you should have started with half a piece of something, right? And there's not a ton of low dose out there. So I'm a big proponent of low dose anything, because it's like, it took me a very long time to figure out vapes actually make me anxious and low dose edibles are my sweet spot, right? It took me a very long time to figure that out, because I thought I hated edibles at first. I'm very, very sensitive to edibles, but it took me how long? It took me years to figure that out. And I work in the industry, and I write this stuff all the time, and I talk to pharmacists and we talk to doctors, and I still took that time to figure that out. And that's because this is, we're talking about, Google has a term for this, YMYL, your money, your life, right? Medical topics, financial topics, things that are supposed to be a little bit more sensitive. Cannabis doesn't really fall into that from Google's perspective, but there's arguments that it should, right? These are folks who are taking something that could result in an altered state of consciousness, could make them feel better, could make them feel worse if they do the wrong thing. And it's up to us to be responsible, not from a marketing perspective, because this is something that is going to influence that person's experience with your brand from here on out, right? If they have one experience of the product, they're not coming back to the product, no matter how clear your label is, or if you put the right thing in there, you're just not going to get it right. You're not winning that person back. And we are in an era where loyalty is incredibly important. We can't win customers on half off your first purchase alone. Everyone's going to cycle out. I call it Bed Bath & Beyond syndrome. Back when I was in electronics, you never, RIP, Bed Bath & Beyond, but you will you never went to Bed Bath & Beyond without the 20% coupon, right? And that's
20 of them.
Exactly. Oh, I found a stack recently cleaning something out. I'm like, you're going to the trash. I'm so sad about it. But like, it's one of those things where that's the same anything. Like, that's the same anywhere. Loyalty marketing is incredibly important for cannabis. People like me, our job is to bring people in the door, and then retention marketing is what keeps them coming back, right? And it's trust, it's community, pricing to some degree. And I think as over the next couple of months, as the economy continues to evolve in the direction it's evolving, price is going to become a bigger factor among more people, whether they just cut back and buy less, or people do become more price shoppers. Either way, it's the loyalty marketing, and more dispensaries are opening up, right? And how are you going to survive this? And it's the foundations you build. Is your brand strong? Are people going to recognize you? Is your website functional? Are you capturing the information you need to? Is it as compliant as it can be, both with the state and with the ADA? Conformance is really the language we use, because ADA compliance is not really existent. Is it speaking to the right people? And you ride the highs and the lows with your tribe, right? And this is exactly what what brands should be thinking about, especially dispensaries that are about to open in this very unpredictable time that we're in right now.
And it is only going to get more unpredictable until we get some type of direction or understanding from a larger governing body, which, that's a whole different podcast episode.
You're funny. Funny. Oh God, I can't. It's
It's, you
Fill in
know,
the blank.
this is, I was about to say, this is what we're dealing with now.
Yep,
But
exactly.
can I just say, thank you, Stella. This has been a fantastic conversation. Yeah, I'm so happy that we got to do this.
Absolutely. I'm happy to rant about AI and quality all the time because I'm just a stickler for quality. I am a huge stickler for giving people their value and doing what needs to be done to get the job done right.
Yes, indeed.
We don't have a list of 200 clients for a reason. It's because
Yes.
you get the individual attention and you get the hands-on work of everybody, all 10 of us.
Yes.
Everybody's involved. It's all hands on deck. It's the 10 brains are by the one. You just can't have that if we have 200 people in the roster, right? So
Exactly.
I'm a big fan of that approach. I think doing things right is the way to go. Cutting corners is where people don't do well, both from an SEO perspective, brand perspective. That longevity really affects where you're going to be 6 months, a year from now. And if you don't lean into it, you're in trouble. So I'm happy to rant about that anytime, Nigel. Thank you for having me.
Of course, it's been fantastic. Can you tell our audience where they can find you and your company?
Yep. So CannaContent at CannaContent.co is our website, not com.co. And I'm mostly on LinkedIn. You'll find me the URL is linkedin.com/in/Stella Morrison, just my name. That's really where I spend most of my time on social, is LinkedIn these days.
Yeah,
so
I feel that.
you'll find me on LinkedIn, and our company handles are all on the website. So you can find our TikTok, our Instagram, our Facebook, which isn't much, but the TikTok and Instagram are where things at. So
Right.
and our LinkedIn, you'll find that all on our website.
Okay, awesome. You can find me on socials at Nigel_Ds or Nigel Despinasse on LinkedIn. And yeah, folks, this concludes episode 10 of Cannabis Pros and Marketing Masters. Hope everyone has a great day. Stella, thank you again.
Thank you, Nigel. Appreciate you.